guys? It's your boy Luke here for our DFS core picks at this week's Genesis Invitational. Here in this video, we're going to be covering my top 6 plays for GPP contests this weekend, one in each price range to give you an idea of some of the players that I'll be building my lineups around. Of course, last week at the WM Phoenix Open ended up being a pretty solid week for us, especially from the outright market. Scotty Scheffler came through for his first ever win, and it was somebody that we had a quite sizable investment in. I was rooting him on throughout the weekend. After Friday, didn't feel the best because he was down there at 3 under, but oh boy did he make a charge on the weekend. That makes it 5 outright winners to this point of the year, which is pretty solid. We've hit an outright in a third of the events so far, that being Max Homa at the Fortinet, Sam Burns at the Sanderson Farms, we had Taylor Gooch at the RSM Classic, Luke List at the Farmers, and of course Scotty Scheffler at the WM Phoenix Open. So overall, we can't complain having 5 outright winners. That's 33% of the time. From a DFS perspective this week, we definitely had our fair share of misses. Victor Hovland missing at the top of the board, ended up missing the cut, screwing us over in our single entry stuff. That was far from ideal. We also had guys like Aaron Wise miss the cut. That was far from ideal. And even though we had guys like Louis Oosthuizen absolutely go off, same thing with Keith Mitchell. Anytime you have some of your highest owned guys miss the cut, it's going to be tough to have that top end upside. So in DFS, we are looking to have a much better week, but can't complain from the outright market there. So in this video, again, going to be covering our core plays for this week and some of my projections for this event as well. All right, guys, on the screen, you can see our key stats for this week. And at Riviera Country Club, one of the more difficult tracks on the entire schedule, definitely taking a look at some of those short game stats. So first and foremost, not a surprise to see shots gained approach at the top of the board. There's probably not going to be a week where it is not the top stat. It is by far the most important part of anyone's golf game that has been statistically proven over the years. Be a good approach player on the PGA Tour, and you're pretty much going to win a ton of money. So that shouldn't be a surprise there. Let's go into some of the buckets, though, to give you an idea of how I'm breaking it down. You can see I'm focusing on 3 categories for the most part: the 150 to 175, the 120 to 150, and the 170 to 200 range. A lot of your shots this week, about 15% more than the PGA Tour average, are going to be in this 150 to 175 range. But you also have your fair amount of gettable holes. All 3 par 5s are mostly going to be layups for about 60-70% of the field, so you're going to have plenty of wedges into them. In fact, there's also 3 par 4s less than 430 yards. So as long as you're getting it out there right around 300 yards, which everyone in this field should be, especially with the firm and fast conditions we expect, should also have your fair amount of wedges. And of course, with the difficult par 3s that you have around Riviera Country Club, hitting some of those irons is also going to be important. In terms of some of the other stats around the green, with a course this difficult, with greens with as much undulation as we have at Riviera, also with firm and fast conditions, around the green really separates you. Even if you're the best ball striker in the world, you're going to miss your fair amount of greens here at Riviera. So it's always something I'm considering. Next up would be driving distance. And while accuracy doesn't tend to correlate to success at the Genesis, driving distance does. And this isn't a super long track. It's not like when we were at Torrey Pines, that type of thing. It really comes down to hitting out of the rough. When you only have 100 to 140 yards out of the rough, that is extremely doable. You can hit something from a 9-iron the whole way down to a degreed numbered wedge to get the ball onto the green. Whereas if you're somebody who's a little bit shorter off the tee, even just 20 to 30 yards shorter, that is a massive difference. That's the difference between hitting something like a 9-iron, potentially something like a 6 or a 5-iron that is going to be much more likely to grab in this Kikuyu rough. It's what we get over here on this West Coast swing, which is why driving distance is routinely one of the most important stats at this course. Next up, we have shots gained putting on POA. We're at POA Anua surfaces, much like what we had for a lot of the other golf tournaments out here. So it's something we're looking at. You can see that's also encapsulated with the 3-putt avoidance, the bogey avoidance, also some of these putting ranges we have down here as well. And lastly, shots gained at majors. Because this is a major championship type venue where you need to have a complete game, where off the tee distance, of course, your approach play is king. That's also going to be something I use for a little bit more of a course history angle. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and talk about some of the core picks for this week. And it should not be a surprise to anyone that Jon Rahm is my core pick up top. If we take a look at the shots gained over the last 50 measured rounds for Rahm, it's very apparent why he's the best player in the world. He's getting over a stroke per round on approach and also over a stroke per round off the tee. Both of those insane numbers. I mean, when Tiger Woods was gaining 1.4 strokes per round on approach. A little bit of back analysis reveals that's what he was doing in his prime. People thought that that was untouchable. In fact, I don't think people expected Jon Rahm or even anyone to be over 1 stroke in every category. And this is per round. This is not over an event. This means that he's just absolutely striping the golf ball. That shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. And maybe the surprising part is the putter. He's been on an absolute fire in that department as well. So in terms of a course fit, what we're looking for here, again, I'll remind you guys, we're looking for guys that are good on approach. He easily checks that stat, gaining over a stroke per round. Around the green, maybe that's a little bit of a weak spot for him, but he's still gaining to the field, so it's not like he's below average. But in every other category, driving distance, one of the best players in the field. Shots gained putting, you saw him, he's gaining 0.71 shots gained putting per round. That's excellent. And in the majors, he won a major championship last year. So pretty much checking every box that we're looking for here. If we take a look at some of the putting numbers on Poa Anua, he's getting 0.54 shots gained putting per round, which is why I prefer him over Patrick Cantlay. Because if we take a look at the recent form, Patrick Cantlay, by far the best player in the world, gaining nearly 3 shots gained to the field per round. But if we take a look at Jon Rahm on Poa, where a lot of people at least assign a lot of value to Patrick Cantlay on Poa Anua, historically, the better player has been Jon Rahm. So that's why I'll be siding with him there. I don't think you can go wrong with either option. But considering just the shots gained that we see over these last 50 rounds, it's really hard to fade Jon Rahm. Again, gaining over 1 shots gained in each category with his ball striking. Cantlay's number is 0.7, 0.5. Those are surely respectable, but that's almost a whole point. Let's just calculate. It's almost a whole 0.65 shots gained less than Jon Rahm. That's just a clear distinction between those two players there. It's why I'm siding that way. Next up, let's move on to our second man in, who's going to be Rory McIlroy. And we haven't seen him on the PGA Tour much of late, but he's been over on the European Tour. And when he's played over there, he's been excellent. Not only does he have 4 made cuts, they've all been top 18 finishes, a top 5 mixed in there as well. And the last time we saw him on the PGA Tour, it wasn't like he was a sleeper either. You can see in terms of recent form, number 16 for the field. That includes a win that didn't have shots gained metrics for it, multiple top 5 finishes, 2 4th place finishes. And at $9,700, you could argue that he's one of the more underpriced players on the entire slate. If you go to the last 24 measured rounds, and again, this doesn't include his game over there on the European Tour, or of course his win that didn't have shots gained metrics, he's still been doing exactly what we're looking for. Gaining off the tee, gaining around the green, and gaining with the putter as well, and gaining significantly in that category. That had been something that had been holding Rory McIlroy back for quite some time, but over the last 2-3 months that we've seen him, that has been one of the bright spots. And this approach number right here is extremely misleading. When he went out there and won that golf tournament, he was looking like one of the best approach players in the world. And I can tell you from the eye test, because I watched all of that European Tour golf over this last month, McIlroy looked dialed in with the wedges. If anything, the putter went cold. So if he can continue to hit those irons the way that he has overseas, if he returns to that putting prowess that we've seen on Poa Anua over the years, in fact, he's a gainer on the surface for his career on the surface. When you compare him to a guy like Victor Hovland, that looks to be a positive. But Rory McIlroy has never really been known for that putting, right? It's always been the ball striking that's carried him. If we can get him on a surface where he's a gainer for his career, all the better, right? We're not expecting him to go out and win this golf tournament with his putting. But again, over the last 24 measured rounds, he's pretty much gone out and done that. So if he ends up going out there putting the hell out of it again, so be it. We'll take that. If we take a look at some of the season rankings for a Rory McIlroy, again, we haven't seen him play all that much. It's encouraging to see that he's top 5 in birdie or better percentage. Of course, with driving distance, number 2 on the PGA Tour. That is never going to surprise us. Some of the accuracy has been off. He's typically one of the more accurate drivers of the golf ball as well, even with that added distance. So hopefully he can start to tune into that a little bit. In terms of some of the other metrics here, he's been great with the wedges. That's also a stat that we were looking at this week, as I mentioned a little bit before. And of course, with some of the long irons, the 150 to 200 yard range, even the 200 plus yard range, he's top 27 in the world in both of those categories. All right, guys, next up for our core picks is going to be Cameron Smith down here at $9,100. I'm trying to sneak in another guy in this 9K range just because of how good a course fit Smith is. You can see in terms of the recent form, number 6 in the field, a top 5 fit at Riviera specifically as well, and a deep dive into some of the recent metrics make him an even more intriguing option. In terms of the shots gained, ball striking categories, you're looking at over 0.1 shots gained off the tee per round for Cameron Smith, which for him is excellent. He's typically one of the worst off the tee players on tour. So for him to be gaining off the tee, that is a drastic stark difference than what we've seen in the past. And we take a look at the approach play. He's always really been a good iron player, particularly with some of those long irons. He's really distanced himself from some of his peers. So it's good to see him gaining over a third of a stroke per round in that category. And of course, with the short game, he's probably at least a top 5 player in the world, if not the best short game player in the world. So not a surprise to see him getting over half a stroke per round with the putting, but also an excellent player with the wedges. And as we said before, around the green play, extremely important at this golf course. Shots gained putting on Poa Nua, also something that I'm taking a pretty heavy look at. And he gains 0.62 shots gained putting per round on Poa Nua. So overall, you're looking at somebody who checks all the categories we're looking for. And something sneaky that Cameron Smith does is he gets it out there with his driving distance. So if we go over here to the season-long rankings and take a look at his driving distance, you'll see that he ranks number 45 on tour. Now, if I had you guess that beforehand, you probably would have guessed a number much higher than that because he's not very long off the tee. But you can also see he's great at this par 5 scoring metric. A lot of the gettable holes here at Riviera are the par 5s, so to be able to take advantage of those is going to be crucial, and he's a specialist at that. If we go over to some of the shots gained categories from the 50 to 125 range, one of the best wedge players on tour. That's really how he dissects these par 5s. Tends to do it with the wedges rather than the long irons. But even with the long irons, respectable, right? Number 91 from over 200 yards. For somebody that hits it just as far as he does, especially with the irons. He hits it a little bit further off the tee, but with the irons, you start to see that lack of distance there. He still does pretty well, right? 43 from 150 to 175 could be a whole lot worse. Number 69 from 175 to 200. He at least gets it by. So the putting is, of course, going to look excellent for Cameron Smith, one of the best putters on tour from within 5 and 10 feet. And something I also mentioned during the course breakdown video is that you're going to have a ton of par putts from 5 to 10 feet. The greens roll out here. They're very firm and fast. There's a ton of undulation in play as well. So making sure you can get up and down, one of Cameron Smith's specialties, is going to help him get by. So I really do like him at his price tag. I think it's more than fair at $9,100. And I do like him as a pivot off of Scottie Scheffler, who we, of course, played last week. We were able to hit the outright bet on, but I don't expect him to turn that around once again. Let's go ahead and go on to one of our value plays here. It's going to be Adam Scott at $8,200. That is at more than a fair enough price tag for a 2-time winner here. And last week we saw Brooks Koepka, also a 2-time winner at the Waste Management Phoenix Open, almost come through for the win, right? Was in contention, wasn't in any good type of recent form whatsoever, but when he got back on a course that really fit his game, that he was comfortable playing on, you saw the results. And we could see a very similar effect with Adam Scott. Let's take a look at the recent metrics, though, and they don't look all that bad for Adam Scott. I think this would surprise a lot of people. He's gaining in every category but around the green, and that's typically something that he's good at. So I don't expect that to be a trend going forward. He should be able to turn that around here at some point. And in terms of the course fit here, he's very straight off the tee, but also relatively long. So he should be able to take advantage of all the easy par 4s. The approach play has been above average of late. If we constrict the sample size down to the last 12 rounds, so really what we've seen here in 2022, the first 3 events, that number goes up to right around half a stroke per round. So in the fall, he really was struggling, but seems to have found something here in the new calendar year. When you have that much time to practice, get away from the game there in December, November, even for him the month before that, he took quite some time off. You're going to have time to find your game. And it really does seem like he found that. The putter did look good. It still has looked good over the last 24 measured rounds. But last week, he implemented a new putter. We hadn't seen him ever use the putter before there at the Waste Management Open. And he made putts in bunches. So whatever the change was made, he went to a new type of Scotty Cameron long putter, that broomstick that he's been using for all these years. It worked. If we take a look at some of these categories over the first start of the year, just for somebody, he doesn't have that much of a sample size, so we don't want to look into this too much. Give you an idea on the driving distance, number 34 on tour. For his age, I think that's a lot better than people would expect. We go over to the iron categories. He's pretty good from over 200 yards, pretty good from the 125 to 150 category. Like I said, we don't want to look into it too much since he doesn't have all that much of a sample size, but checking all the boxes we're looking for. And if you like yourself some course history, he's got the best in the field, other than a Bubba Watson, right, who's also a 2-time winner. You're going to be far-fetched to find somebody who has better finishes than him. Next up, moving on to our core pick, is going to be Mackenzie Hughes. He's going to be our diamond in the rough at $7,100. You can see in terms of the recent form ranking, he's number 13 in the field, number 52 in terms of his Riviera fit, but there's a few things about his game specifically that I think translate very well here. So let's go over to the recent form metrics, and with this recent run of form he's been on, the metrics have looked very, very solid. For him, anywhere near neutral with the ball striking stats is excellent. This is somebody who's going to gain a majority of their strokes this week with the around the green play and of course with the putter that is just absolutely electric. And remind you guys, two of our top key stats here are around the green and of course the shots gained putting on POA. And if we look at his putting specifically on POA Nua, for his career gaining over half a stroke per round, and that is for a massive sample size. He's also somebody that routinely shows up at the major championships. I mean, Mackenzie Hughes, one of the better around the green players on tour, one of the better putters on these firm and fast greens. So that really shouldn't be a surprise. It really just comes down to this ball striking. Can he go out there and slightly gain in both categories? If he can do that, he's going to threaten a leaderboard at some point. He could win a golf tournament this year for all I know. That's the type of upside that he has given the short game, just how good that short game can be. At the same time though, even if he goes out there, plays to his averages, which is as of right now an average ball striker, he's gonna make a cut, could potentially even crack that top 10, top 15, which makes him a great DFS play at $7,100. People don't like playing Hughes either. He's far from a sexy pick. He's not a flashy pick either because of the ball striking numbers, because they never look that good. But time and time again, the guy shows up at these major championships, or at least the major championship type venues, and posts a performance. I mean, at Memorial, over there from Muirfield Village, he always tends to show up. He showed up at the US Open. He showed up at the Masters. This guy just has a knack of putting up low scores at these difficult events, even at the API. He's done it there before as well. You name it, Bay Hill, these hard golf courses, he's the guy to target. So that's why he's going to be our diamond in the rough at $7,100. All right, guys, and lastly, our last core pick, our diamond in the rough, our flyer play, going to be Aaron Rai at $6,400. He's somebody who doesn't deserve to be priced this low. I mean, given the recent form, this guy should be at least in the 7K range. If we take a look there, he's number 33 in the field in recent form. The course fit at Riviera is ideal at number 20 in the field, so not a surprise to see him there at number 17 in terms of total model ranking. The putting on Poa Nua, also excellent, so really just adding more reasons to the board while we like Aaron Rai this week. And if we take a look at the recent form specifically over the last 24 measured rounds, it's going to become even more attractive. Over 4/10 of a stroke gained per round off the tee. Over a third of a stroke gained per round on approach. The putter has been hot, but not quite as hot as we've seen historically on Poa Nua. And even though around the green hasn't been his strong suit, this is just so much better than all his peers. I'm more than willing to forgive that. This is somebody who, if he gets hot with the approach play, we saw what can happen at the Farmers Insurance Open. He can compete to win a golf tournament. So I don't expect that to happen this week. I had similar feelings about Sahith Theegala when we went out and played him for these last 3 to 4 weeks. He was coming in with this good recent form. You don't expect him to go out there and win or compete. But sometimes it ends up being the case, right? So Aaron Rai, I do like him at this price. He does have that top end upside if everything were to go right for him. But more than anything, he has a very solid shot of going out there and making the cut this week. And of course, also finishing in the top 20. And at this type of price tag, that should be more than enough to pay off in some of your smaller field events, if not some of these larger field GPPs, if you end up getting a really good combination with that salary that you're saving. So I love them in pretty much all formats this week, whether it's cash, GPPs, single entries, you name it. If we take a look at some of these advanced metrics for the year, it's going to start to become even more apparent why we like them. So scroll down here to an Aaron Rai, $6,400. You take a look at the metrics from 175 to 200, he's number 36 on tour. That's excellent. Sure, some of the other ranges don't look all that great, but we got to remember this is for a small sample size. So we don't want to hold it against him all too much. The accuracy, he's pretty accurate off the tee. He might not be the longest player off the tee, but we do have some firm and fast conditions here. So it's not like I want to completely write him off. It is still just a 7,300 yard golf course. So just because he's not long off the tee doesn't mean we need to write him off. But if we take a look at the last 50 rounds, he's playing actually even better with the putter than we would have expected. Actually, with the off the tee play, 0.42, 0.46 on approach. So the more and more of a sample size that we give Aaron Rai, the better the ball striking gets. So it's not like it's a small sample size thing for him. Sure, the putting gets a little bit more into the negative, But at the same time, historically on the surface, this is where he's his best. He gains over half a stroke per round. So I expect him to progress positively with that putter. The ball striking has just looked immaculate over these last 50 measured rounds, over the last 24 measured rounds. However you want to go ahead and slice it up, making him an excellent value play for this week. That is all I've got for this week's core picks. Before we go on and get out of here, go ahead and let me know down in the comments who you guys think ends up winning this week's event. Last week we ended up having Scottie Scheffler. Thought he would come through for his first win. This week, I think it's one of those top-end options. I do really like Jon Rahm. I also have my eyes on Rory McIlroy, but potentially even Dustin Johnson. Those would be my top 3 winners this week. Whether you guys have 1, 2, 3 guys that you're thinking about to win, go ahead and let me know who they are down below. And as always, going to have even more DFS content coming throughout the week, whether it's our value picks, which will be dropping a little bit later on this evening, our weekly DFS live stream we'll be doing at Wednesday at 7 p.m., or my prize picks content, or my showdown content throughout the weekend. We'll have you guys completely covered. So if you haven't already subscribed to the channel here, GS Luke DFS, highly recommend you guys go ahead and do so you don't miss any of that to come. I appreciate all of your support here on the channel. If you guys have any questions or any concerns with the players in the player pool, go ahead and feel free to go ahead and let me know in the comments as well. Until next time, guys, good luck with all of your lineups for this week, and let's get this cash.